New York 14 is the source of a lot of the workers in New York City's service economy. So, you know, Uber drivers, they're all over the city, but where do they live? They live here.
Right.
They live in areas like Parkchester. They live in places more upstate, more up north in the city, up on the outer boroughs. This is where they live. This is where waitresses live. This is where cleaners live. This is a working class community. And we need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
Yeah, and then that's what you're running your campaign on. So talk about your New Deal. Double new to the second power, I guess.
Yeah.
And how that would affect this area that's the service industry, working class industry, or working class industry, but working class all here. Those would be the people you're representing.
Yeah, absolutely. So in order for our economy to really evolve and move forward, we need to make strategic investments in transforming our economy, in creating higher skilled jobs, but also solid, dignified blue-collar jobs as well. And so the way that we do that, while also meeting the grave challenge of climate change, is that we have to invest in changing to a renewable energy economy in 15 years. And you know, some people say 2050, but we actually think that, and when we look at these numbers, we see that it's possible on a shorter timeline. And in order for our generation to survive life as we know it and maintain a sense of normalcy, we need to switch to renewable energy as quickly as possible. And that includes things like infrastructure investments, like putting solar panels and garden roofs all over the city, including in this neighborhood, in training people in the capacities to do that. And also a lot of the other retrofitting that's required in our energy sources, in our buildings, in order to transition over our economy. So there are a lot of jobs up and down, because then you also need engineers, you need climate scientists, and you need the folks that are going to be actually able to lay the bricks and get it done. So it's really a jobs bill, but also we have a suite of legislation that will bring jobs to the district, including Medicare for All.
Right.
Because Medicare for All is a jobs bill as well.
Yes. But just to talk a little bit more about your climate change point, we constantly hear from the right and some in the center that renewable energy, creating those jobs, you know, it's not economically viable. But those are always the same people taking the money from the industries where they're incentivized to say that. So it's not about economic growth when you hear that talking point. It's really about preserving the already existing power structures and already existing economies. That doesn't necessarily help a district like this, and doesn't actually help grow the economy, just perpetuate the already existing structures. So I think that's a very forward-thinking kind of thing.
Yeah, and when people talk about things not being economically viable, they're thinking about short-term returns.
Exactly.
They're not thinking
for
about
themselves too.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about the long-term economy. And frankly, businesses and special interests are not incentivized in any way to think about the long term. They're only incentivized to think about the short term, what's going to give me a profit in Q1 or Q2, which often are these band-aid solutions, but it's our job as citizens and members of government to think about the long term and to think about how we're not only going to survive but thrive 7 generations on from now. And I think that this community is really emblematic of the kind of economy that we're trying to advocate for on a national level from my campaign. So all these workers here are unionized. Everyone from the folks doing construction up there to our groundskeepers are members of a union, and they all have dignified wages. My own family are groundskeepers here, so my uncles and my cousins.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they've been working here because their job offers them dignity in terms of their wages, because they have health care, because they are paid enough to really live. They have lived here for decades. They've raised children here, and they have really been able to lead a productive life. And it's not a lot that it takes. It's not like we're asking for the whole world here.
Yeah.
We're asking for a wage that allows you to pay your rent, feed your kids, and sock away a bit of it so for the future.
Yeah.
For whatever it is that that may be for you. And it's really not that much, but people want to act like we're asking for the world.
Yeah. No, they do, because there's so much power and powerful interests against that, and they just warp the conversation. And all we're really talking about is giving people a living wage, and they make things that are very possible sound impossible. And that's what's the most frustrating thing for me about the debate. Because a lot of the people who are experiencing college debt are younger and not yet in power, I mean, you're in your 20s, so you can relate to this. The college debt issue isn't being talked about, save, Bernie Sanders and really Elizabeth Warren. I'll give her a ton of credit, because even before 2016 and when these issues were brought to light by Senator Sanders, she had been on the warpath about the college and the interest rates when people were taking loans from the government, etc. New York has a decent system with CUNY. What do you want to propose on the national level, and how would it be different from the city's college plans?
So in terms of college, I'm not going to stop until we have tuition-free public institutions for everyone. That means if a single mom wants to go back to school and get her degree, she should be able to do that. That means that if a working student and a working class student that needs to work a job while they make their way through school needs to get a degree, we need to help them do that. New York is good, but we're not great on this issue. We're certainly at the forefront of working on debt-free college, but right now, the New York State, we have something known as the Excelsior Scholarship. Bernie Sanders came out for it. It was good when it came out, but it's largely targeted towards upwardly mobile students who don't need to work while they're in college. So it doesn't cover you if you're a part-time student, which working students have to be part-time. It doesn't cover you if you're a part-time student, doesn't cover you for any postgraduate education. And as our economy evolves, we need to be making investments so that people can be high-skilled without encountering all of these barriers to entry. This is not just about four-year liberal arts educations either. This is about vocational schooling. This is about apprenticeships, because there are certain jobs that are going to be offshored, but that's because American manufacturing needs to be sophisticated. So we shouldn't be, our manufacturers and the people in the labor movement here, we need to be working on assembling some of the higher tech, next generation materials, whether it's building materials, whether it's vehicles, whether it's energy sources. That's the manufacturing that needs to be happening in America. And then as it is further commoditized, then sometimes those styles of manufacturing get offshored. And it's a difficult reality, but really where I see the future of manufacturing being is a constant learning environment where we're constantly learning how to manufacture new innovative goods.
The NYPD has had a ton of history with stop and frisk and racist policies. What would you bring to this district in terms of trying to address the policing in this in the city?
Another thing too is that Rikers Prison is in my district.
That's a huge topic as well.
Yeah, and there is a wide range of issues, and one of the things that I'm very proud of in this campaign is that we meet with organizers and we hand over the keys in our policy. So we meet with labor organizers and we say what needs to be done. You write it and we'll work with you. And so in meeting with criminal justice advocates and sitting down with Black Lives Matter Greater New York, one of the things that we are asked to advocate for is to demand an independent prosecutor anytime a person dies in an altercation with a police officer. Because one of the big problems that we have is that basically this system is investigating itself. And when you have precincts, when you have AGs, when you have people who are investigating their own system for wrongdoing, it's unsurprising that no charges will be presented any of the time.
We would never ever allow that for any other issue.
We would never allow Wall Street to investigate itself. We would never allow fossil fuel corporations to investigate themselves for dumping. And even on a municipal level, we don't allow the accused to investigate itself. And so the reason this has kind of traditionally been an exemption is because we need due process to be used to investigate an issue in our criminal justice system. About 70 to 80% of people kept in Rikers Prison are there because they can't afford jail. They can't afford bail, rather. And when you look at the crimes that land someone in Rikers, a lot of the times they're not violent crimes. People get thrown in Rikers if they jump a Metro card turnstile. And if someone is caught jumping a turnstile and they don't have the fee to swipe their Metro card, and then they don't have the money to pay bail, they get thrown into Rikers. But that doesn't happen in almost any other situation. If you don't have any money left on your Easy Pass, you don't get thrown into Rikers. If you don't have, if your car runs out of gas on the side of the road, you don't get thrown into Rikers.
And that's a lot of Cy Vance's kind of decision making as the district attorney. I don't understand that.
There's a huge problem with cash bail and money bail. And there's a lot of different legislative issues that we need to address, but at the end of the day, it's the fact that we aspire to incarcerate so many people in this country. There's a lot of incentivizing that goes on about being overly punitive in our criminal justice system. By throwing people in jail for crimes that don't deserve that kind of treatment is part of our system, and it's part of why we incarcerate so many people in this country.